Hello bookish friends, this is my first update for October. It's already the 9th. I've only finished 3 books. I've been having a hard time focusing and reading. It's been a while since we've taken a break from homeschool, but I've still finished 3 books. The first one I finished for the month was Esther by John Piper. This one is actually poetry that Piper wrote about the book of Esther. So it gives a little bit of historical context, but then it leaves out parts of the actual Esther book from the Bible. I still really enjoyed it. I know, I enjoyed poetry. What's going on? I did love the illustrations too. So, yeah, a decent 3.5, 4-star read. And I think I'm going to count this for the classic or short story on the fall book bingo. Not book bingo. Fall scavenger hunt that Charlene at Coffee and a Book is doing for September, October, November. Because this book is really short and like half of it's pictures. And I did also try the winter spice tea that I got as a pre-order goodie for Winter's Maiden. So that's another thing checked off. And then I finished A Very Dangerous Game by Rachel O. Phillips. This is book 7 in the Scotch Bakehouse Mysteries. This one we actually follow Carol. I think this is the first one that she's been the main character for a book. And she makes friends with one of her regulars, and then she stops showing up or shows up not on her usual day, and Carol goes out to check on her and she's missing, and there's things that are not Prilla's that are there. So she calls in the police and the mystery ensues. So I liked, this was definitely cozy. There's little pranks for the month of the fairies, and they make cookies for Harvest Festival, and this one actually has a little bit of faith in it, but Carol also like goes off and does stuff on her own in trying to help the police find her missing friend, and I didn't like that quite so much. And we didn't get as much of Angus. I still really love this cover, which I think for Anne-tober I put this one on Special Friendship, because we have the Bakehouse 3, Carol, Molly, and Laura, who have the bakehouse. But then there's also the friendship between Carol and Prilla, the missing woman. So that's what I put on that square. And I finished Destination Unknown on ebook. That one's by Agatha Christie. It's not actually a murder mystery, it's more of a thriller. These scientists go missing and they don't really know why, and one in particular they're trying to find. And then we also follow Hillary, who she's divorced and her child has died and she wants to commit suicide, but as she's about to take the sleeping pills, a guy knocks on her door and comes in, and he's like, that's not the way you want to do it, because it has a high failure rate. It's not as easy as you think, or as pleasant, I should say. And so he asks her to take the place of a dead woman who's supposed to meet her husband with the scientists, and it was a really interesting one. I actually quite enjoyed it. I know some people didn't, because they're like, oh, it's not a murder mystery, where's the mystery? But I did like following Hillary, and then later what she did to make it so these people could find her. So yeah, I hope to get some more books finished by the weekend, but we shall see. I'll be back with another check-in. Okay, it's been more than a week and I have a stack. I have 4 books, a DNF, and an unhaul. So I'm going to start with my library book, Firefly Hollow. I think I saw this one on Pinterest. It came up as I was looking at things, and it has really cute illustrations, and it's about a firefly who dreams of going to the moon, and a cricket who dreams of learning to play catch, and a little boy whose friend, I think, died. And then we also have the River Vole, I think, who's the last of his kind. And so Peter, the fireflies and the crickets call people giants, and the children miniature giants, who are just going to be future giants. And Peter can hear Firefly and Cricket talk, and his parents think that they're just his imaginary friends and that he's just trying to cope with his friend. Doesn't actually say that he dies, but I think he did. And I liked parts of the story, but it just fell flat for me, because it doesn't actually deal with death. I move on, like, he moved on and he made a new friend and things started to be okay, but there's no faith in it, so it never actually answers the question of what happens when you die. And yeah, I'll give it 3 stars. Don't feel the need to read it to my kids or get a copy or reread it. So, and then from my TBR game, for most recent purchase, I read The Blue Castle. This was actually reread for me, but I did buy a new copy with better font, and it was a lovely reread, just what I needed for the time. And for Shatona's Anne-tober. I forget. Just a minute. I don't know if in my other clip I actually talked about all of the reading challenges I'm doing this month. I have the carryover of Charlene at Coffee and a Book's Fall Scavenger Hunt, which I did check off several things. I just have a fall activity left and to play a new board game. I don't think I counted any of these, so maybe. And then I'm doing Chantal at Chantal Reads All Day, her Cozy Cottage Readathon, and the Blue Castle I counted for on a hike because Valency and Barney go on lots of rambles. And I've definitely read a book with a blanket, and In the Dark because I read at night and while drinking tea. Oh, you know what? One of the books I'm currently reading mentions tea too, and a fireplace. Anyway, and then I'm also doing Shatona Havoc's Anne-tober, which I counted Destination Unknown for an ebook. I counted A Very Dangerous Game for Kindred Spirits, a book about special friendship. There's The Bakehouse 3, and then Carol's friendship with Prilla. And then Firefly Hollow I counted for Dreams Come True, because one of their dream comes true. And then The Blue Castle I counted for Romantic Sensibility, because this book definitely romanticizes nature and those sensibilities. And I really did like this one. I still stand by my 5-star rating. Which, if you don't know what the Blue Castle is about, Valancy finds out in one of the first chapters that she has a heart condition and only has maybe a year to live, and so she decides she's going to actually live during that year, and so she decides she's not going to just live for her family's expectations of what she should do, and she goes and takes care of a sick friend and other things, and I quite enjoyed it. And next, I'll talk about my DNF. I tried to read The Singer. I drew it for first in a series, and I didn't get very far into it, and it's just not for me. So I'm going to unhaul this one and the finale, which is book 3. Because if I'm not going to read book 1, I'm not going to read book 3. And then I read Trustfall by Shatona Havig. This is one of the Somali books. Shatona and a group of authors has books set in this set of made-up islands, and this was Shatona's 3rd book, because she did Under the Hibiscus and The Tidal Wave, which I do recommend you at least read those 2 before reading this one. I didn't read any of the other books in the series, and this is book 12, and I could follow along with what was going on, but only because I'd read the first 2. And this has ties with her Agency Files books, so I don't know if you want to, maybe you should read those 2 before reading this one, so you at least one of them. Don't have to read all of them, but at least one of them to get the idea of what the agency is. Simon works for the West Coast branch, and what they do is they protect people, but they're not official government sanctioned missions. And he is supposed to protect Kenzie without her knowing, because her fiance was killed and she was traumatically injured in an accident. She thinks it was an accident, but it was a planned accident, and they think she's too fragile mentally to be extracted, and so he has to protect her without her knowing. And I wrote this one from an author who makes me laugh, because Shatona does make me laugh. There were some funny moments in this, not as much as some of her other books, because it is slightly suspenseful. And I had a great time, because there's a book boat that Kenzie works on, and it was a lot of fun. And finally, for nonfiction, I chose Women of the Word by Jen Wilkin. This one had actually been on my TBR for a while, so I think I get to count that one for Anne-tober too. How to study the Bible with both our hearts and our minds. Emphasis on minds. This little book had really good recommendations for putting a book in context with who wrote it, why was it written, who was it written for, and then taking the time to read a book in the Bible in multiple translations, and to look up the cross-references and any words that you don't know in like an English Bible, and to see like between different translations, different word choices, and any words that are repeated throughout the text, and just different ways to actually sink your teeth into the word and not get the most out of it necessarily for yourself, but like what the text would have meant for the original audience. How does this show the attributes of God? How does this point you toward God? And not just, how can I apply this to my life? No, that's not the point. the word is about God and should be studied as such. And then at the very end, see how it applies to your life and how it can make you a better image bearer. So, had a really good reading week. I still have an ebook that I haven't finished that I really want to for the Buzzwordathon, and I'm about halfway through my current book, and I need to get going on another nonfiction. I'm actually listening to a book on audio because I have an Audible subscription right now, and that's my furnace kicking on, so I'll be back with another update. It has been a busy few days around here, but I have finished 4 books. I finished The Dark Lord's Daughter by Patricia Reed. I read this one for the October Buzzwordathon. I think the prompt was relationship or something like that, and it's daughter is in the title. So Patricia Reed was one of my favorite authors as a younger adult, and so I thought I'd give her newest book a try. This one, oh, I can't remember her name. It's told in first person, which always makes it harder. The main character and her adopted mother and adopted brother are at the state fair, and this guy comes up and he's like, "You're the missing Dark Lord's daughter," and he takes them off to a fantasy world, and it has light magic and dark magic, which makes people think that the dark magic people have to act in a certain way, and then the light people have to act in a certain way, and the light people are always defeating the dark people. And there's nothing actually inherently villainous about the dark magic, and there's nothing inherently good about the light magic. It's just the people who have light magic, their hair turns a light color when they come into their magic, and the dark magic people, their hair turns dark when they come into their magic. And so the main character is basically like, I don't want to do all these bad things. I don't want to execute people just because they fail me or get on my nerves or whatever. My 3-year-old's sharpening a pencil. Really hard to find time to film with 4 kids. Anyway, the castle is a bit of a wreck because there's not been a Dark Lord for like 10 years to kind of run things and repair the castle and everything. So she's trying to learn what the culture is where she is, and she keeps being like, no, we're not going to do that because I don't want to execute people. I don't want to exile my biological half-sister and such. So it's kind of more just poking fun at all of the middle grade fantasy tropes, and I quite enjoyed it. And I also finished Pros and Cons. This is the second book in a Magic Bookshop mystery series. Violet is the caretaker of her family's bookshop. There's a tree growing in it that kind of gives magical powers to the caretaker to help people find the books they need. And this one has the mystery at the poetry reading that they have. So one of the members of the writing club who's there for the poetry reading falls down the stairs and like breaks her neck and dies, and then they find out that maybe things were done to make her fall on purpose, and there were some twists in here that I forgot, so I enjoyed my rereading. I pulled this one for cozy vibes, and yeah, it's a great autumn read. And in homeschooling, we finished the last Concord Cunningham's book in the series. The kids are a little sad. Again, these are just, each book has 12 short mysteries. They're anywhere between 4 to 10 pages. And yeah, there's a scripture verse to help solve the mystery. And my kids, especially my boys who are 10 and almost 8, really enjoyed it. So they're a little sad to be done with the series. And finally, I finished the Phantom Tollbooth. This one was one of my possibilities for Goodreads random number. And this is a classic, like, sort of portal fantasy. The boy, Milo, he's very bored, and he ends up getting this box, and it's a toll booth that he puts together, and he drives his little electric car by it, and then he ends up in this other world. This is great for just plays on words and language, and there is a quest he must do, and the watchdog is a fun companion, and he gets another companion along the way. And yeah, I am going to have my boys listen to this when they're done with what they're currently listening to on their audio time in the afternoons. And yeah, I might pick up a copy so they can have the fun pictures. We've got illustrations throughout. See if I can find another one of the illustrations. That won't be spoilery. Smile at the beginning, showing his boredom. Oh, this one is supposedly the author and the illustrator was making fun of. So I will probably have one more wrap up because I think I should finish at least 2 more books by the end of the month. So see you in a bit. So editing, Ashley coming in because I realized I forgot to update on the reading challenges I'm participating in for October. And so for the Fall Scavenger Hunt, this is from Charlene at Coffee and a Book. I did, let's see, I finished a fall activity, spoiler for November, I finished Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. They have a bonfire with salamanders, and it's a cool scene. And I also played a new to us game. It's not a board game, it's a card game, but I'm gonna count it anyway. We played Danger Noodle, which is a game that has friendly animals and not so friendly animals, and it was good for my kids to work on their addition and subtraction skills. And that completes this one. I don't think I'm missing any from October. This was running September through November. And for Chantel, at Chantel Reads All Days Cozy Cottage Readathon, we finally had a rainy day, and I was driving, so my kids and I listened to our audiobook, which was Rachel Saint at the time. And then I added the Life Giving Home for With a Blanket, because it talks about having blankets available for your guests to wrap up in. I don't know if I did the Dork Lord's Daughter. Obviously has some scenes at night. The Blue Castle, they go on rambles. Pros and Cons has a scene where they're drinking peppermint tea. Oh, and Trustfall also has some scenes that are rainy. And for Shatona's Anne-tober, I did black out my card. Technically, I didn't finish Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban in October, but I had gotten about halfway through, so I'm still going to count it. So for Anne-tober, I don't know how well you can read it. The first one was Call Me Anne with an E. Had to read an ebook. I read Destination Unknown by Agatha Christie. Kindred Spirits, a book about a special friendship. I did A Very Dangerous Game, because there's the friendship among the 3 bakers, but then Carol and one of their regulars. I suppose it was a romantic way to perish. Romantic sensibilities. I did The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery. Just, that book has so much nature and atmosphere in it, and I really loved it. Number 4, some books are best left on the shelf, a book that's been on your TBR for a while. I did Women of the Word by John Milken. That one had been on my TBR for a long time. It was one of the last ones on my Goodreads TBR. And for the free space, I did Esther by John Piper. Number 5, it is ever so much easier to be good if your clothes are fashionable. Oh, great cover. Which I did pros and cons. So I really love the cat and the books and the crow. No mistakes. Set in a school. I did Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. When your imaginations come true, dream come true, I did Firefly Hollow because all of the characters have a dream that they are working toward. And finally, life is worth living as long as there is a laugh. An author who makes you laugh. Shatona has great humor, and I read Trustful for that one. So now I will get back to my reading wrap-up. I have 2 books that I managed to squeeze in at the end of the month. We finished our Christian Heroes Then and Now book for homeschool. This year we did Rachel Saint, who was the sister of Nate Saint, the one we just did. And this one shows how God used the killings of the missionaries to reach the Aucas, or the Waorani, if you want to be less insulting, because Auca is the Quechua name for the tribe. They call themselves the Waorani. And it was good to see how God could use such terrible events to bring about good. All of the people, all of the men who speared the missionaries ended up coming to Christ. And I think 1 or 2 of them even ended up baptizing 2 of Nate Saint's children. And then I did read Christmas on Jane Street. This was my other option for random number on Goodreads. My mom bought this for me for my birthday, so I thought I'd go ahead and read it. This is a true story. Billy Romp would bring his family from Vermont to New York City and sell Christmas trees every December, and this is one of those years. I liked most of it and the community that they created while they were there, but the climax felt awkward to me because the whole time Billy's afraid that his oldest daughter is becoming worldly and is going to want all of these things that he can't afford to give her, and causes tension. And then the climax is that she ends up going and seeing the Nutcracker with her friend and doesn't call home to say she's going to be staying with her friend. And that kind of makes Dad upset. It does resolve itself, but the whole dealing with that felt kind of awkward. And yeah, I think that means I read 12 books this month. Here's all of the ones I own. And yeah, it was a good reading month. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read in November, and I'll see you next week for a video. Happy reading!